Daddy, they left me at the top of the mountain. It's dark and so cold.
I'll find you.
The phone rang at 3:47 a.m., and I knew my life was about to change forever. Not because of some mystical intuition, but because my 8-year-old daughter was sobbing on the other end, her voice barely audible through the static of a bad mountain connection. "Daddy, they left me at the top of the mountain. I'm scared, and it's so cold, and I can't find anyone." I bolted upright in bed, my heart hammering against my ribs like a caged bird. "Chloe, sweetheart, where are you exactly?" But the line went dead. "My name is Tom Rayner, and 6 months ago I thought I had it all figured out. Successful architectural firm, beautiful wife, adorable daughter, and a house in Denver's most exclusive neighborhood that screamed power couple to anyone who drove past. The kind of life that looks perfect in Christmas cards and makes your college buddies hate you just a little bit." Then, I wrapped my BMW around a telephone pole on I-25 during a late February ice storm, and everything started to unravel like a cheap sweater. The accident left me with a shattered left leg, 3 broken ribs, and a concussion that made me forget my own middle name for 2 weeks. More importantly, it left me homebound for 3 months, giving me a front row seat to watch my marriage disintegrate in real time. Julia, my wife of 10 years, had always been what you might charitably call emotionally efficient. She approached feelings the same way she approached real estate deals, with cool calculation and minimal waste. But during my recovery, that efficiency transformed into something that felt more like contempt. "You're pathetic," she'd said just last week, watching me struggle to navigate the stairs with my walking cane. "Lying around feeling sorry for yourself while I'm out there keeping this family afloat." She wasn't wrong about keeping us afloat. Julia's real estate empire had exploded over the past year, thanks largely to her partnership with Carter Walsh, a tech entrepreneur who'd made his fortune selling data analytics software to insurance companies. Carter was the kind of guy who wore expensive suits to hide his soft gut and drove a Tesla to compensate for his receding hairline. He was also, I'd begun to suspect, sleeping with my wife. The signs were subtle at first. Late-night client meetings that couldn't be verified, new lingerie that never made an appearance in our bedroom, phone calls that ended abruptly when I entered the room. And then there was the way Julia looked at me. Like I was something unpleasant she'd stepped in and couldn't quite scrape off her shoe. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Right now, at 3:47 a.m. on a Saturday in March, my daughter was lost on a mountain somewhere in Colorado, and my wife wasn't even in bed beside me. I grabbed my phone and called Julia's cell. It went straight to voicemail. I tried again. Same result. Panic started to creep up my spine like ice water. Chloe had gone on a weekend ski trip to Vail with Julia and her parents, the Hendersons, who'd made it clear from day one of our marriage that they considered me an unfortunate speed bump on their daughter's road to social prominence. Tom's nice enough, I'd once overheard Julia's mother tell a friend at a dinner party, but he lacks ambition. Julia could have done so much better. They'd invited themselves along on this ski trip, ostensibly to spend time with their granddaughter, but I suspected it was really to continue their decade-long campaign to convince Julia she'd married beneath her station. I'd been excluded from the trip, officially because of my leg, but really because Harold Henderson had made some comment about not wanting to babysit the cripple while they were trying to enjoy themselves. Julia hadn't defended me. Now my daughter was lost on a mountain, and I was 3 hours away with a leg that could barely support my weight. I tried Julia's number again. This time she answered on the 4th ring. "What?" Her voice was thick with sleep and irritation. "Julia, thank God. Chloe just called me. She's lost on the mountain. She said you left her at the top and she can't find anyone." There was a pause. Then Julia laughed. It wasn't a nervous laugh or a confused laugh. It was the kind of laugh you might make when someone tells you a mildly amusing joke about something that doesn't concern you at all. "Oh, that," she said. "Yeah, she's being dramatic. She wandered off during lunch and got herself turned around. I'm sure she'll figure it out." "She'll figure it out?" "Julia, she's 8 years old and it's below freezing up there." "Look, Tom, I didn't call you for parenting advice. Chloe is your little snowflake, not mine. I never wanted her anyway. You deal with it." The line went dead. I sat there in the darkness of our bedroom, staring at the phone in my hand, trying to process what I'd just heard. My wife of 10 years, the mother of my child, had just told me she'd abandoned our daughter on a mountain and didn't care enough to mount a rescue. That's when I knew something was frozen inside Julia Rayner, and I wasn't sure it was just her heart. I called 911 and explained the situation to a dispatcher who connected me to Vail Mountain Rescue. Within 20 minutes, I was in my car, driving through the pre-dawn darkness toward the mountains, my damaged legs screaming in protest every time I had to work the clutch. The rescue coordinator, a weathered man named Pete Morrison, met me at the base lodge as the first ski patrol teams were heading up the mountain. The sun was just beginning to paint the peaks pink, and the temperature was holding steady at 15 below zero. "We've got teams on every major trail," Morrison told me, his breath forming clouds in the frigid air. "If she's up there, we'll find her." But as the hours passed and the search teams came back empty-handed, I began to prepare myself for the worst. Chloe was small for her age, barely 60 pounds soaking wet. How long could she survive in conditions that would challenge an experienced mountaineer? Julia and her parents showed up around noon, just as the search was entering its 9th hour. Julia's performance was Academy Award worthy. Tears streaming down her face, clutching her mother's arm for support, playing the role of the devastated mother to perfection. "I just turned around, and she was gone," Julia sobbed to a reporter who'd caught wind of the story. "She's everything to me. I don't know what I'll do if we don't find her." I watched this display from across the parking lot, fighting the urge to walk over and tell everyone what Julia had really said when I'd called her. But something held me back, some instinct that told me I needed to be very careful about my next moves. At 2:30 p.m., Pete Morrison approached me with the expression of a man who'd delivered too much bad news in his career. "Tom, I need you to prepare yourself. We found something under the ice near the base of Cascade Falls." My world collapsed. Everything went white at the edges, and I had to grab Morrison's arm to keep from falling. "Is it?" "We don't know yet. The recovery team is working on it now. But I wanted you to know." Julia's wails of grief echoed across the parking lot. Her mother held her while her father paced back and forth, barking orders at anyone in uniform. The perfect tableau of a family in crisis. But as I stood there, numb with shock and grief, my phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Chloe's phone. "Daddy, I'm okay. I'm in a warm place with nice people who gave me hot chocolate. Don't tell Mommy where I am yet. Something bad is happening, and I'm scared of her." My hands shook as I read the message again. Then again, Chloe was alive. She was safe, and she was afraid of her own mother. I looked across the parking lot at Julia, still performing her grief for the cameras, and felt something cold and hard crystallize in my chest. She had wanted us to believe Chloe was dead. She had wanted me to suffer the loss of my daughter. The question was why. But as I watched Julia lean into Carter Walsh's arms, when had he arrived? I began to understand, and I began to plan. "She wanted us lost," I whispered to myself. "Now I'll make her wish she'd never found me." The thing about revenge is that it requires patience, and patience was something my 3 months of recovery had taught me in abundance. I didn't rush to Chloe immediately. Instead, I watched Julia's performance for another hour, studying every gesture, every tear, every perfectly timed sob. She was good. I had to give her that. If I hadn't received that text message, I would have believed her grief was genuine. Carter played his role perfectly too, the supportive family friend offering comfort in a time of crisis. He kept his hands appropriately placed, his expressions suitably somber. But I caught the way he looked at Julia when he thought no one was watching. Not like a friend consoling a grieving mother, but like a man protecting his investment. Finally, I approached Pete Morrison and showed him Chloe's text. "Jesus Christ," he breathed, reading the message. "Where is she?" "I'm going to find out." "But Pete, I need you to keep this between us for now. Something's not right here, and I need to understand what's happening before we bring everyone else into it." Morrison studied my face for a long moment, then nodded. "I've been doing mountain rescue for 23 years, Tom. I've seen all kinds of family dynamics play out in crisis situations. Some of them aren't pretty." "What do you mean?" "I mean, your wife hasn't asked me a single question about our search protocols, hasn't demanded to speak with team leaders, hasn't insisted on going up the mountain herself. Most parents in her situation would be climbing the walls, demanding answers. She's playing to the cameras, not trying to find her kid." I felt a grim satisfaction that someone else had noticed Julia's performance. "Can you give me an hour before you call off the search? I think I know where Chloe might be." Morrison nodded. 1 hour. But Tom, if that little girl is really in danger, we need to involve law enforcement. "I know, and we will. I just need to understand what I'm dealing with first." I texted back on Chloe's phone. "Sweetheart, it's Daddy. Can you tell me where you are?" The response came quickly. There's a sign that says Rocky Mountain Rescue Station 7. A lady named Sarah found me and brought me here. She says I was hypothermic, but I'm okay now. Daddy, why did Mommy leave me? She told Grandpa Harold that she hoped I would wander off permanently and that it would solve a lot of problems. My blood turned to ice water. Julia hadn't just abandoned Chloe. She had hoped our daughter would die on that mountain. I texted back, I'm coming to get you right now. Don't talk to anyone else until I get there, okay? And sweetheart, you did nothing wrong. Daddy loves you very much. Rescue Station 7 was a small emergency shelter about halfway up the mountain, accessible by snowmobile or cross-country skis. I borrowed gear from the ski patrol and made the 20-minute journey with my legs screaming in protest every inch of the way. Sarah Martinez, the volunteer who'd found Chloe, met me at the door. She was a retired EMT who spent her winters volunteering with mountain rescue. Your daughter is remarkable, Sarah told me as she led me inside. She was nearly hypothermic when I found her around 8 a.m., but she never panicked. She told me exactly what happened. And Tom, you need to know that this wasn't an accident. Chloe was wrapped in blankets by a wood-burning stove, sipping hot chocolate from a thermos. When she saw me, she burst into tears, not from fear, but from relief. Daddy, I knew you'd find me. I held her close, feeling her small body trembling against mine. I'm here, baby. You're safe now. Can you tell me exactly what happened? Chloe's story came out in fits and starts, interrupted by tears and moments where she seemed to struggle with whether she should be telling me these things about her mother. We were having lunch at the restaurant at the top of the mountain, she began. Mommy and Grandpa Harold were talking about money stuff, something about insurance and how much money they would get if something happened to you and me. My heart stopped. What kind of insurance, sweetheart? I don't know. But Grandpa Harold said that Mommy was smart to get the extra policy without telling you. And then Mommy said that if I had an accident on the mountain, it would be sad, but it would also solve their problems. Sarah and I exchanged glances. What happened next, Chloe? Mommy told me to go to the bathroom, but instead of showing me where it was, she pointed toward a trail and said the bathroom was that way. When I said I couldn't see a building, she got mad and said I was old enough to figure it out myself. So I walked down the trail looking for a bathroom, but I got lost and it started snowing really hard. How long were you lost before Sarah found you? I don't know, a long time. I tried to go back, but I couldn't find the restaurant. I was really cold and scared. That's when I called you. But then my phone died. Sarah spoke up. Tom, I found her around 8 a.m., which means she was exposed to the elements for at least 6 hours in sub-zero temperatures. If she'd been out there much longer. She didn't need to finish the sentence. We all knew how it would have ended. There's something else, Daddy, Chloe said quietly. When we were driving up to the mountain yesterday, I heard Mommy talking to that man Carter on the phone. She said that after this weekend, you wouldn't be a problem anymore, and they could be together without having to worry about splitting everything up in a divorce. The pieces were falling into place, forming a picture so ugly I could barely process it. Julia and Carter had planned this. They had taken out a life insurance policy on Chloe and me, then orchestrated our daughter's passing to collect the money and eliminate the complications of a divorce. But they had underestimated two things: Chloe's intelligence and survival instincts, and the fact that being bedridden for 3 months had given me plenty of time to think about the changes in my wife's behavior. I pulled out my phone and called my best friend Shane Morrison, Pete's younger brother and a cybersecurity expert who owed me more favors than either of us could count. Shane, I need your help. Can you meet me at my house in 2 hours and bring your laptop? We're going to destroy some people. Jesus, Tom, what's going on? I'll explain when you get there, but Shane, this is life and end stuff. And it's going to get ugly. I turned to Sarah. I need you to keep Chloe here for a few more hours. Can you do that? Of course. But Tom, you need to call the police. I will. But first, I need to gather evidence. If I go to the cops now with just Chloe's testimony, Julia and Carter will lawyer up and claim she's traumatized and confused. I need proof of what they've done. Sarah nodded grimly. How long do you need? Give me until tonight. Then if you don't hear from me, call Pete and tell him everything. I kissed Chloe goodbye and promised her I'd be back soon. As I made my way back down the mountain, I called Julia's phone. Tom, thank God. Have they found anything? Her performance was still flawless, but now I could hear the calculation behind it. They found some clothing under the ice, I lied. They're bringing in specialized equipment to recover whatever's down there. Julia's sob sounded genuine, but I caught something else in her voice. Relief? Satisfaction? I can't handle this, Tom. Carter's going to drive me back to Denver. I need to be somewhere familiar while we wait for news. Of course, I said. I'll stay here until they find her. Tom, I'm sorry for what I said on the phone earlier. I was half asleep and scared. You know I love Chloe. I know, I lied. We'll get through this together. But as I hung up the phone, I was already planning how to tear Julia's world apart piece by piece. The first step was the insurance policy Chloe had overheard them discussing. The second step was documenting Julia's affair with Carter. The third step was going to be the most satisfying, watching them both realize they'd underestimated the wrong man. Julia thought she was married to a broken, pathetic architect who was too damaged to fight back. She was about to learn that 3 months of forced inactivity had given me plenty of time to think, plan, and prepare for war. And in war, the first casualty is always trust. Shane Morrison arrived at my house at 6 p.m. sharp, carrying a duffel bag full of electronic equipment that probably violated several federal laws. Shane was the kind of guy who could hack into the Pentagon's lunch menu if he put his mind to it, but he used his powers mostly for good, and occasionally for helping his friends navigate messy divorces. Okay, talk, Shane said, setting up his laptop on my kitchen table. Pete filled me in on the basics, but I need details. I told him everything. Chloe's phone call, Julia's reaction, finding Chloe alive, and most importantly, what Chloe had overheard about the insurance policy and Julia's plan. Shane whistled low. Jesus, Tom, that's attempted homicide. That's why I need evidence before I go to the cops. Julia's smart, and she's got money. If I accuse her without proof, she'll claim Chloe's traumatized and confused, and I'll look like a vindictive ex-husband trying to destroy her in a custody battle. What do you need from me? First, I need you to help me find this insurance policy. Chloe said Harold mentioned that Julia got it without telling me, which means she forged my signature or lied on the application. Shane's fingers flew across his keyboard. What's your social security number? I gave it to him, and within minutes he was scrolling through databases that definitely weren't supposed to be accessible to civilians. Bingo, Shane said. Mutual assurance life insurance policy taken out 3 months ago. $2 million on you, $1 million on Chloe. Beneficiary is Julia Rayner. And Tom, look at this signature. He turned the laptop toward me. The signature on the digital application was supposed to be mine, but it was clearly forged and not very well. She didn't even practice, I said, staring at the screen. She was so confident this would work that she didn't bother to make it look convincing. There's more, Shane said, pulling up another screen. The policy has an accidental passing clause that doubles the payout. If you and Chloe died in an accident, Julia would collect $6 million. $6 million. Enough to start a new life with Carter Walsh, free from the burden of a disabled husband and an unwanted child. Can you download all of this? Already done. But Tom, we need more than just the insurance fraud. We need to prove intent. I've got Chloe's testimony about what she overheard, but you're right. We need more. Shane leaned back in his chair. What about Julia's phone? If she and Carter were planning this, they had to communicate somehow. Julia's not stupid enough to leave evidence on her phone. Maybe not, but Carter might be. Guys like him always think they're smarter than they are. What kind of phone does he use? I thought back to the times I'd seen Carter at social events. iPhone, latest model, he's always showing it off. Shane grinned. Perfect. iPhones back up to the cloud automatically, unless you specifically turn it off. If I can get into his iCloud account. Is that legal? Probably not, but neither is attempted homicide. Your call, Tom. I thought about Chloe, alone and terrified on that mountain, believing her own mother had abandoned her to die. Do it. Shane worked for another hour, his fingers dancing across the keyboard with the intensity of a concert pianist. Finally, he leaned back with a satisfied smile. Got him. Carter Walsh, born 1978, lives at 1247 Cherry Creek Drive. His password is Tesla 2023. Why? Because of course it is. And Tom, you're going to want to see this. Shane pulled up Carter's text messages from the past week. What I saw there made my blood run cold. Carter, everything set for this weekend? Julia, yes, Harold's on board. The policy is active. After Saturday, we'll be free and rich. Carter, what about Tom? Julia, what about him? He's a broken man. Even if he suspects something, he's too weak to do anything about it. Carter, and the kid? Julia, accidents happen in the mountains, especially to children who don't listen to their mothers. There it was, in black and white. Premeditated homicide, conspiracy, insurance fraud. Everything I needed to destroy them both. But as I read through more messages, I realized this went deeper than just wanting me and Chloe dead. Julia and Carter had been planning this for months, carefully manipulating circumstances to make our ends look accidental. Julia, Tom's accident in February was perfect timing. Now he looks unstable, depressed. If he were to have another accident... Carter, you're brilliant. No one will question a man with head trauma making poor decisions. Julia, the beauty is that everyone will blame him. Poor Tom, never recovered from his injuries, took his daughter on a dangerous hike he wasn't capable of handling. They had planned to eliminate us both and make it look like my fault. Julia would be the grieving widow, collecting sympathy and insurance money while starting her new life with Carter. Shane, can you copy all of this? Already done. Tom, this is enough to put them both away for 20 years. But as I stared at the evidence of my wife's betrayal, I realized that prison wasn't enough. I wanted them to suffer the way they'd made Chloe suffer. I wanted them to experience the same terror, helplessness, and betrayal they'd planned for us. I'm not going to the cops yet, I said. Shane looked at me like I'd lost my mind. Tom, these people tried to eliminate your daughter. What more do you need? I need them to confess. I need them to admit what they've done in a way that can't be explained away by expensive lawyers, and I need the whole world to see what kind of people they really are. What are you planning? I smiled, and I could feel that it wasn't a nice smile. I'm going to give them exactly what they deserve. But first, I need to make a phone call. I dialed Julia's number. She answered on the second ring, her voice thick with fake emotion. Tom, any news? They found her, I said quietly. Julia's sharp intake of breath sounded genuinely shocked. Is she... She's alive, Julia. Hypothermic and traumatized, but alive. Mountain Rescue found her in an emergency shelter. There was a long pause. When Julia spoke again, her voice had changed. Less grief, more calculation. Thank God, she said, but I could hear the disappointment underneath. Where is she now? Hospital in Vale. They're keeping her overnight for observation. I'm driving up there now. I'll meet you there. No, I said firmly. Julia, Chloe is traumatized. She keeps saying you left her on purpose. The doctors think it's better if she doesn't see you until she's had some counseling. Another pause. That's ridiculous. I would never... I know you wouldn't. But right now, we need to do what's best for Chloe. Give her a few days to recover, then we'll bring her home and get her the help she needs. Julia's voice turned cold. Fine. But Tom, I want to be involved in every decision about her treatment. She's my daughter, too. Of course, I lied. I'll call you tomorrow with an update. After I hung up, Shane was staring at me with a mixture of admiration and concern. You're playing a dangerous game, Tom. If Julia figures out that you know what she did, she won't. Julia's biggest weakness is that she thinks she's the smartest person in every room. She's so convinced that I'm a broken, pathetic sufferer that she can't imagine I might be planning something. And what exactly are you planning? I looked at my friend, loyal, brilliant Shane, who dropped everything to help me without asking for anything in return, and made a decision that would change both our lives forever. I'm going to destroy them, Shane, completely and utterly. I'm going to take everything they have, everything they are, and everything they ever hope to be. And when I'm done, they're going to wish they'd never heard the name Tom Rayner. Shane was quiet for a long moment. Then he closed his laptop and looked at me with the same expression he'd worn when we were kids planning elaborate pranks on our older brothers. Okay, he said. Where do we start? We started with Carter's Tesla. At 3 a.m. on Sunday morning, Shane and I drove to Carter's house in Cherry Creek, one of Denver's most exclusive neighborhoods. Carter lived in a modern monstrosity that looked like a glass cube, designed by someone who'd never heard of the concept of home. His precious Tesla Model S sat in the circular driveway like a monument to his own self-importance. You sure about this? Shane whispered as we crept across the perfectly manicured lawn. He tried to eliminate my daughter, I whispered back. I'm sure. What we did to Carter's car wasn't illegal, exactly, but it was definitely creative. Shane had brought a collection of items that would make Carter's life miserable without causing permanent damage. Industrial-strength stink bombs that would activate when the car reached operating temperature, a small device that would make his premium sound system play children's nursery rhymes at full volume whenever he tried to use his phone, and my personal favorite, a GPS hack that would route him to the city dump every time he tried to go somewhere important. But the piece de resistance was the message I spray painted on his windshield in washable paint. Child butcher. That might be a little much, Shane said, admiring our handiwork. No, I said, thinking of Chloe shivering alone on that mountain. It's not nearly enough. By the time we got back to my house, the sun was coming up and I had 17 missed calls from Julia. I let it ring 3 more times before answering. Tom, thank God, something terrible has happened. What's wrong? I asked, injecting just the right amount of concern into my voice. Someone vandalized Carter's car. They spray painted horrible things on it and did something to the engine. It smells like a sewer and won't stop playing Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. Carter thinks it might be connected to Chloe's accident somehow. Connected how? Maybe someone saw us at the mountain and blamed us for what happened. Tom, I'm scared. What if they come after us next? The fear in Julia's voice was genuine, and I felt a dark satisfaction hearing it. For the first time in months, my wife was experiencing real anxiety, real helplessness. It was a good start. Where are you now? I asked. At Carter's house. The police are here taking a report. Carter's furious. He keeps saying someone's going to pay for this. I'm sure it's just random vandalism, Julia. You know how people in this city feel about Teslas. This wasn't random, Tom. Someone wrote child butcher on his windshield. That's too specific to be a coincidence. I let a moment of silence stretch between us. Julia, is there something you're not telling me? Some reason someone might think Carter hurt a child? Of course not. That's insane. But I could hear the uncertainty in her voice now. Julia was smart enough to know that the vandalism was connected to what had happened on the mountain, but she couldn't figure out how or why. That uncertainty would eat at her, make her paranoid and prone to mistakes. Look, I'm sure the police will figure it out, I said. How's Chloe doing? Any change? I told Julia that Chloe was in the hospital, traumatized and refusing to see her mother. In reality, Chloe was safe with Sarah Martinez at the mountain rescue station, playing board games and recovering from her ordeal. The doctors won't let me see her, Julia said, and for the first time, I heard genuine emotion in her voice. Not love or concern for Chloe, but frustration at being denied access to something she considered her property. They say she's having some kind of psychological episode. What kind of episode? She keeps telling them that I left her on the mountain on purpose. She says I wanted her to die. It's obviously trauma-induced delusion, but the doctors are taking it seriously. That must be hard for you, I said, not meaning a word of it. It is. Tom, I need you to talk to her. Tell her that what she thinks happened isn't real. Make her understand that I love her. I'll try, Julia, but you have to understand. Chloe went through something terrible. It might take time for her to recover. How much time? There it was, the question that revealed everything. Julia wasn't asking because she was worried about Chloe's well-being. She was asking because she needed to know how long she had to maintain her performance as the grieving, concerned mother. I don't know, I said. Maybe weeks, maybe months. Julia's sharp intake of breath told me everything I needed to know. She couldn't maintain this charade for months. Sooner or later she'd slip up, and when she did, I'd be ready. I have to go, Julia said abruptly. The police want to ask me more questions about the car. After she hung up, Shane looked at me with admiration. You're really good at this. Good at what? Psychological warfare. You've got her scared and confused, and she doesn't even know why. I thought about that for a moment. 3 months ago, I would never have imagined myself capable of this kind of manipulation. But 3 months ago, I'd never imagined my wife would try to eliminate our daughter for insurance money. She created this version of me, I said finally. She wanted a sufferer, someone weak and broken who wouldn't fight back. Now she gets to live with the consequences. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah Martinez. Chloe's asking for you. When can you come up? I showed the message to Shane. I need to go get my daughter. Can you keep monitoring Carter's communications? Absolutely. But Tom, what's the end game here? You can't keep Chloe hidden forever. He was right, of course. Eventually, I'd have to bring Chloe home and face the legal system. But I wasn't ready for that yet. I needed more evidence, more leverage, more ways to ensure that Julia and Carter paid for what they'd done. Give me a week, I said. 1 week to gather everything we need to destroy them completely. Shane nodded. 1 week. But Tom, promise me something. What? Promise me you won't lose yourself in this. Revenge is intoxicating, but it can also consume you. Don't let what they did turn you into something you'll hate. I looked at my oldest friend, this man who'd dropped everything to help me wage war against people who'd tried to eliminate my child, and I felt a moment of clarity. Shane, they tried to eliminate my daughter. They planned it, they executed it, and they would have succeeded if Chloe hadn't been smarter and stronger than they anticipated. I'm not consumed by revenge. I'm motivated by justice. And what does justice look like to you? I thought about Chloe, alone and terrified on that mountain, believing her own mother had abandoned her to die. I thought about Julia's performance for the cameras, her crocodile tears and calculated grief. I thought about Carter's smug confidence that he could eliminate a child and get away with it. Justice looks like the whole world knowing exactly what kind of people they are, I said. Justice looks like them losing everything they care about, the same way they tried to take everything I care about. Justice looks like them spending the rest of their lives knowing that they destroyed themselves. Shane was quiet for a long moment. Then he opened his laptop and started typing. 1 week, he said. Let's make it count. By Tuesday, Julia was starting to crack. I could hear it in her voice when she called for her daily update on Chloe's condition. The smooth confidence was gone, replaced by an edge of hysteria that she was struggling to control. Tom, this is ridiculous. I demand to see my daughter. I don't care what the doctors say. Julia, you can't just demand to see her. She's traumatized. Every time someone mentions your name, she starts crying. This was actually true. When I'd visited Chloe on Monday, I gently asked her how she felt about seeing her mother. Chloe had burst into tears and begged me not to make her go back to the scary lady who wanted me to die. She's my daughter, Julia shrieked. I have legal rights. And you'll have a chance to exercise those rights. But right now, the doctors are focused on her recovery. What doctors? What hospital? I want names, Tom. I want to speak to someone in charge. I'd been expecting this demand for days. Julia was too controlling to accept being shut out indefinitely. Fortunately, Shane and I had prepared for this moment. Dr. Elizabeth Chen at Denver Children's Hospital, I said, giving her the name of a real psychiatrist who specialized in childhood trauma. But Julia, she won't discuss Chloe's case with you without a court order. Patient confidentiality. What Julia didn't know was that Dr. Chen was Sarah Martinez's sister-in-law, and she'd agreed to help us by confirming that Chloe was indeed her patient if anyone called to check. The beauty of the plan was that it was technically true. Dr. Chen had evaluated Chloe and recommended continued therapy for trauma recovery. Fine, Julia said. I'll get a court order. That's your right, I said calmly. But Julia, you should know that if this goes to court, they're going to ask Chloe to testify about what happened on the mountain. Are you sure you want to put her through that? There was a long pause. Julia was smart enough to realize that Chloe's testimony would be devastating, especially if it came out in open court, where reporters could hear it. I just want to see my daughter, Julia said. And for the first time, she sounded genuinely defeated. I know you do, and you will, but we have to do this the right way for Chloe's sake. After I hung up, I called Shane. How's the surveillance going? Better than expected. Julia and Carter met for lunch yesterday at the Cherry Creek Country Club. I've got audio from the bug I planted in his car. Shane had managed to plant a listening device in Carter's Tesla while it was being repaired from our Sunday morning vandalism. Technically illegal, but the conversations we'd recorded were pure gold. Play it, I said. Shane's laptop speakers crackled to life with the sound of Carter's voice, tight with anxiety. This is getting out of hand, Julia. Someone knows something. That's impossible. The only people who were there were me, my parents, and Chloe. And Chloe was unconscious when they found her. Then explain the vandalism. Explain why someone spray-painted child butcher on my car. It could be anyone. Maybe someone from Tom's work who blames us for what happened. You're not thinking clearly. This is targeted maltreatment. Someone knows what we did. There was a pause, then Julia's voice, cold and calculating. Even if someone suspects something, they can't prove anything. Chloe's testimony won't hold up in court. She's 8 years old and traumatized. Without physical evidence, it's just speculation. What about the insurance policy? What about it? Spouses take out life insurance policies all the time. The fact that I forged Tom's signature is unfortunate, but it's not proof of homicide. Carter's laugh was bitter. Unfortunate? Julia, insurance fraud is a felony. Only if they can prove I intended to collect on it. And since Tom and Chloe are both alive, there's no fraud. Just a paperwork error. Shane stopped the recording. She's thought of everything, hasn't she? Not everything, I said grimly. She hasn't thought about what happens when the whole world hears this conversation. What do you mean? I'd been thinking about this for days, ever since we'd started gathering evidence. Julia was right. Legally, it would be difficult to prove attempted homicide. A good lawyer could argue that Chloe's abandonment was negligence, not intent to eliminate. The insurance policy could be explained as fraud, not homicide conspiracy. Even the recorded conversations could be dismissed as venting or hypothetical discussions. But Julia had made one crucial mistake. She'd built her entire life on her reputation. Her real estate business depended on trust and social connections. Her relationship with Carter was based on their mutual desire to climb the social ladder. Her standing in Denver's elite circles was everything to her, and all of that could be destroyed in a single afternoon. Shane, how many followers does the Denver Social Scene Instagram account have? Shane pulled up the account on his phone. 200,000. Why? The Denver Social Scene was a gossip account that covered the city's elite social events. Julia had been featured on it dozens of times, always perfectly dressed and smiling for the camera at charity galas and society parties. What would happen if someone sent them audio recordings of Julia and Carter discussing their plan to eliminate a child for insurance money? Shane's eyes widened. Tom, that's nuclear. You'd destroy both of them completely. Good, but you'd also destroy any chance of prosecuting them legally. Once that audio goes public, any defense lawyer worth their fee will claim it was taken out of context or edited. I don't care about prosecuting them legally. I care about making sure everyone knows what they are. Shane was quiet for a long moment. There's no coming back from this, you know. Once you pull this trigger, Julia will know it was you. She'll come after you with everything she has. I thought about Chloe, still afraid to come home because she didn't feel safe around her own mother. I thought about Julia's performance at the mountain, her crocodile tears for the cameras while she celebrated our daughter's supposed passing. I thought about the $6 million they would have collected if their plan had succeeded. Let her come, I said. I'm not the same man she married. She's about to find out exactly who she's been living with for the past 10 years. Shane nodded slowly. Okay, but we do this right. We don't just release the audio. We release everything. The insurance documents, the text messages, the timeline of events. We make it impossible for them to spin this as anything other than what it is. How long do you need? Give me until Friday. I want to create a comprehensive package that tells the whole story. And Tom, I want to include Chloe's testimony. Not her speaking on camera, but a written statement about what happened. People need to hear her voice in this. I hesitated. Using Chloe's words felt like exploiting her trauma for revenge. But then I remembered what she'd said when I'd asked her about it. Daddy, I want people to know that Mommy isn't nice. I want them to know so other kids don't get hurt. Okay, I said, but we protect her identity. No photos, no real name, nothing that could come back to hurt her. Agreed. And Tom, after we do this, you need to take Chloe somewhere safe. Julia's going to be desperate, and desperate people do dangerous things. I'd already thought of that. Sarah Martinez had a cabin in Montana where she spent her summers. She'd offered to take Chloe there until the legal situation was resolved. Already handled, I said. Chloe will be safe. Shane opened his laptop and started working. Friday afternoon, he said. We'll release everything at 3 p.m., right when people are getting off work and checking social media. Maximum impact. As I watched my best friend prepare to destroy my wife's life, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Peace. Not happiness, not satisfaction, but the calm that comes from knowing you're doing the right thing. Julia had gambled that I was too weak and broken to fight back. She was about to learn that she'd bet on the wrong man, and in 2 days, the whole world would know exactly what kind of person she really was. Friday afternoon arrived gray and cold, with the kind of Denver weather that makes everyone want to stay inside and scroll through their phones. Perfect conditions for what Shane and I had planned. At 2:45 p.m., I was sitting in my car outside Julia's real estate office, watching through the floor-to-ceiling windows as she conducted what looked like an important client meeting. She was in her element, perfectly dressed, confidently gesturing at property listings, every inch the successful businesswoman. In 15 minutes, that world would come crashing down. My phone buzzed with a text from Shane. Package is ready. You sure about this? I typed back, do it. At exactly 3 p.m., Shane hit send on the most comprehensive character assassination in Denver social media history. The package went simultaneously to the Denver Social Scene Instagram account. 3 local news stations, the Denver Post's investigative team, and 50 of the most influential gossip bloggers in the city. The headline read, "Denver Socialite's Homicide Plot Exposed. Audio recordings reveal plan to eliminate husband and child for insurance money." Below that was everything. The insurance documents with Julia's forged signature, the text messages between her and Carter, the audio recordings of their conversations, and a carefully written statement from an 8-year-old sufferer describing how her mother had abandoned her on a mountain to die. Shane had done brilliant work. The presentation was professional, the evidence was overwhelming, and the story was impossible to ignore. Within minutes, it was being shared across every social media platform in the city. I watched through the office window as Julia's assistant approached her with a tablet. Julia glanced at it dismissively, then her expression changed. The color drained from her face as she scrolled through the post, her mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. Her client, a well-dressed woman in her 60s, leaned over to see what had captured Julia's attention. The woman's face went through a series of expressions: confusion, shock, disgust, and finally horror as she realized she was sitting across from someone accused of trying to eliminate a child. The woman stood up so quickly she knocked over her chair, grabbed her purse, and practically ran from the office. Julia was alone now, staring at the tablet in her hands as her entire world collapsed in real time. I could see her hands shaking as she tried to call someone, Carter probably, or maybe her lawyer. My phone rang. Julia's name appeared on the screen. "Hello, Julia." "You fool!" Her voice was raw with rage and panic. "You did this. You destroyed me." "I didn't do anything, Julia. I just made sure people knew the truth about who you really are." "The truth? You have no idea what the truth is. That audio was taken out of context. Those text messages don't mean what you think they mean." "Really? Then explain to me what accidents happen in the mountains, especially to children who don't listen to their mothers, was supposed to mean." Silence. "Explain to me why you took out a $6 million insurance policy on me and Chloe without telling me." More silence. "Explain to me why you told me on the phone that you never wanted Chloe and that she was my problem to deal with." "I was upset. I wasn't thinking clearly." "You were upset, so you decided to let our daughter freeze to end on a mountain? That's your defense?" Through the office window, I could see Julia pacing back and forth, her free hand gesturing wildly as she spoke. "Tom, please. We can work this out. Whatever you want. Money, custody, the house. It's yours. Just make this go away." "I can't make it go away, Julia. It's already out there. The whole city knows what you are now." "But you could issue a statement. You could say it was all a misunderstanding." I almost laughed. Even now, facing complete social and professional destruction, Julia still thought she could manipulate her way out of consequences. "Why would I do that?" "Because I'm the mother of your child. Because we were married for 10 years. Because somewhere deep down, you must still care about me. You tried to eliminate my daughter, Julia. You planned it. You executed it. And you would have succeeded if Chloe hadn't been stronger and smarter than you gave her credit for. The only thing I care about now is making sure you never hurt her again." "Where is she?" Julia's voice turned desperate. "Where's Chloe? I need to see her. I need to explain." "Explain what? How you pointed her toward a mountain trail and told her the bathroom was that way. How you hoped she would wander off permanently and solve your problems. How you planned to collect $6 million from our ends and start a new life with Carter?" "It wasn't supposed to happen like that. The plan was..." Julia stopped abruptly, realizing she'd just confessed. "The plan was what, Julia?" But she'd already hung up. I sat in my car for another few minutes, watching as Julia's office emptied out. Her employees were leaving early, probably hoping to distance themselves from the scandal before it could damage their own careers. Through the window, I could see Julia sitting alone at her desk, her head in her hands. My phone buzzed with notifications. The story was spreading faster than Shane had predicted. #Denver homicide plot was trending on Twitter. The Denver social scene Instagram post had been shared over 1,000 times in less than an hour. Local news stations were already running breaking news alerts. But the most satisfying notification was a text from Carter. "You've destroyed us both. I hope you're happy." I texted back, "I'm not happy, but I'm satisfied." As I drove away from Julia's office, I thought about the past week. 7 days ago, I'd been a broken man, recovering from an accident and watching my marriage fall apart. Now, I was the architect of my wife's complete destruction, and I felt no guilt about it whatsoever. That should have worried me. The old Tom Rayner would have felt terrible about ruining someone's life, even someone who deserved it. But the old Tom Rayner had never had someone try to eliminate his child. My phone rang again. This time it was Pete Morrison from Mountain Rescue. Tom, I just saw the news. Jesus Christ, I can't believe Julia actually planned this. Believe it. The evidence is overwhelming. Where's Chloe now? Is she safe? She's with Sarah at the cabin in Montana. They left this morning. Good. Tom, you should know that the police are going to want to talk to you. This is a criminal matter now. I know. I'm ready for that. Are you? Because once this becomes a legal case, everything changes. You won't be able to control the narrative anymore. Pete was right, of course. By releasing the evidence publicly, I'd force the authorities to act. Julia and Carter would be arrested, probably within hours. There would be trials, testimony, media coverage. Chloe would have to relive her trauma in court. But that was a price I was willing to pay to ensure that Julia never had the opportunity to hurt another child. Pete, can I ask you something? Sure. In all your years doing mountain rescue, have you ever seen anything like this? A parent deliberately endangering their own child? There was a long pause. Once, Pete said finally. About 15 years ago. A father took his son hiking in Rocky Mountain National Park. The kid fell off a cliff and died. At first, it looked like an accident, but something didn't feel right. Turned out the father had taken out a life insurance policy on the kid 6 months earlier. What happened to him? Life in prison. But Tom, that case took 3 years to prosecute. The father had money and good lawyers. He almost got away with it. Julia won't get away with it. The evidence is too clear, and now it's public. No jury will ignore what she did. I hope you're right, but be prepared for this to get ugly. Julia's going to fight back with everything she has. As if summoned by Pete's words, my phone buzzed with another call. This time, it was a number I didn't recognize. Tom Rayner, this is Rebecca Martinez with Channel 7 News. We'd like to schedule an interview with you about the allegations against your wife. It was starting. Within hours, my phone would be ringing constantly with interview requests, legal threats, and probably death threats from Julia's supporters. My quiet life as a recovering architect was over. But as I thought about Chloe, safe in Montana, and finally free from the woman who'd tried to eliminate her, I realized I didn't care. Let them come. Let Julia throw everything she had at me. I'd already won the only battle that mattered. My daughter was alive, and the whole world knew exactly what kind of person had tried to take her from me. Now came the reckoning. The reckoning came faster than I'd expected. By Saturday morning, Julia and Carter had both been arrested. The charges were extensive: conspiracy to commit homicide, child endangerment, insurance fraud, and a handful of lesser crimes that would probably be plea bargained away. But the big three were enough to put them both in prison for decades. I was in my kitchen, drinking coffee and reading the Denver Post's front-page coverage of the story, when someone started pounding on my front door. Through the peephole, I could see Harold and Margaret Henderson, Julia's parents, flanked by two men in expensive suits who had "lawyer" written all over them. I opened the door but kept the chain lock engaged. Harold, Margaret, gentlemen. "You son of a witch," Harold snarled. "You've destroyed our daughter with your lies and fabrications. Actually, I destroyed your daughter with her own words. Would you like me to play the audio recordings again?" One of the lawyers stepped forward. "Mr. Rayner, I'm David Goldman, representing the Henderson family. We're prepared to offer you a substantial settlement in exchange for a public retraction of your allegations." "How substantial?" $5 million. I almost laughed. They were offering me almost as much money as Julia would have collected from my passing to pretend she hadn't tried to eliminate me. That's very generous, but I'm not interested. $10 million, Goldman said without hesitation. Still not interested. Margaret Henderson spoke for the first time, her voice dripping with the kind of entitled fury that only comes from a lifetime of buying your way out of consequences. "Tom, you're being unreasonable. Julia made a mistake, but she doesn't deserve to have her life destroyed over it." "A mistake?" I stared at her through the gap in the door. "Margaret, your daughter tried to homicide your granddaughter. She abandoned an 8-year-old child on a mountain in sub-zero temperatures and hoped she would die. What part of that sounds like a mistake to you?" "Julia would never hurt Chloe." "Then explain the insurance policy. Explain the text messages. Explain why she told me she never wanted Chloe and that she was my problem to deal with." Harold stepped forward, his face red with rage. "Those recordings are fake. You hired someone to create them to frame Julia. Really? Then you won't mind if the FBI's audio forensics team examines them, will you? The lawyers exchanged glances. They knew the recordings were real, just like they knew their clients were guilty as hell. Mr. Rayner, the second lawyer said, you should consider the impact this is having on your daughter. Do you really want her to grow up knowing her mother is in prison? That was the wrong thing to say. I unlatched the chain and opened the door fully, stepping out onto the porch so I was face to face with these people who thought they could buy their way out of attempted homicide. Let me explain something to you, I said quietly. My daughter is 8 years old. 3 days ago, she called me crying and terrified because her mother had abandoned her on a mountain to die. She spent 6 hours in sub-zero temperatures, believing that the woman who was supposed to protect her had left her to freeze to end. She's having nightmares. She's afraid to sleep alone. She asks me every day if the scary lady is going to come back and try to hurt her again. I paused, letting that sink in. So, no, I don't want Chloe to grow up knowing her mother is in prison. I want her to grow up knowing that when someone tried to hurt her, her father fought back. I want her to know that actions have consequences, and that no amount of money or social status can buy your way out of trying to eliminate a child. Harold Henderson stepped closer, his voice dropping to a threatening whisper. You're going to regret this, Tom. We have resources you can't imagine. We'll destroy you in court. We'll take everything you have. I smiled, and I could feel that it wasn't a nice smile. Harold, you're welcome to try. But you should know that I've been planning for this conversation since Tuesday. Shane? My friend stepped out from behind the corner of the house, holding a video camera. Every word of this conversation has been recorded, I said, including your attempt to bribe me and your threat to destroy me in court. I'm sure the prosecutors will find it very interesting. The lawyers were already backing away, recognizing a disaster when they saw one. But Harold Henderson was too angry to think clearly. You think you're so smart, don't you? You think you've won? Julia's going to beat these charges, and when she does, she's going to take Chloe away from you. You'll never see your daughter again. Actually, Harold, Julia's parental rights were terminated yesterday. Emergency custody hearing? Chloe is legally mine now, and Julia will never have unsupervised contact with her again. The color drained from Harold's face. That's impossible. We would have been notified. You were. The notice was served to Julia in jail yesterday afternoon, didn't she tell you? Margaret Henderson started crying. Not the elegant tears of a society matron, but the ugly sobs of a woman watching her family's reputation crumble in real time. This isn't over, Harold said, but his voice had lost its threatening edge. He sounded like what he was, a desperate old man watching his world collapse. Yes, it is, I said. It's been over since the moment Julia decided to hurt my daughter. Everything that's happened since then has just been the consequences playing out. After they left, Shane and I went back inside. He was grinning like a kid on Christmas morning. That was beautiful, Tom. You handled them perfectly. They'll be back, with better lawyers and a more sophisticated strategy. Let them come. You got the law on your side now. Julia's in jail, you have full custody of Chloe, and the evidence of what she did is overwhelming. My phone rang. It was Sarah Martinez calling from Montana. Tom, I just saw the news. Are you okay? I'm fine. How's Chloe? She's processing. She saw some of the news coverage. She wanted me to ask you if the scary lady is going to jail. Yes, for a very long time. And she wanted me to tell you that she's proud of you for being brave. I felt tears welling up in my eyes for the first time since this whole nightmare began. Tell her I'm proud of her too, and tell her that Daddy's going to make sure she's always safe. Tom, there's something else. Chloe wants to come home. She says she's not scared anymore because everyone knows the truth now. Is she ready for that? The media attention is going to be intense. I think she is. This little girl is stronger than you know. She wants to face this head on, just like her father did. After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen and thought about the past week. 7 days ago, I'd been a broken man, betrayed by his wife, and nearly destroyed by her attempt to eliminate our child. Now Julia was in jail, her accomplice was facing decades in prison, and I had full custody of the daughter they'd tried to eliminate. It should have felt like victory, and in many ways it did. But, as I prepared to bring Chloe home to a world where everyone knew her mother had tried to homicide her, I realized that the real work was just beginning. The legal battles, the media attention, the long process of helping my daughter heal from her trauma, All of that lay ahead, but for the first time in months, I felt ready for whatever came next. Julia had tried to destroy us, and instead, she destroyed herself. The truth was out, justice was being served, and my daughter was safe. Sometimes that's all the victory you need. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This isn't over. You'll pay for what you've done to my family. HH." I showed the message to Shane, who just shrugged. Empty threats from a desperate man. Harold Henderson's world is crumbling, and he's looking for someone to blame. Maybe, but I'm not taking any chances. I want security cameras installed before Chloe comes home. Already on it. And Tom, there's something else you should know. What? Shane pulled up a news article on his laptop. Carter's company just fired him. Stock price dropped 30% yesterday. His investors are suing him for fraud. The man's finished. I read the article, feeling a grim satisfaction. Carter Walsh had thought he was smart enough to eliminate a child and get away with it. Instead, he'd lost everything. His company, his fortune, his freedom, and his future. Good, I said. He deserves everything that's coming to him. And Julia? I thought about my wife of 10 years, sitting in a jail cell, facing the destruction of everything she'd worked to build. Her real estate empire was collapsing, her social standing was obliterated, and she would spend the next 20 years in prison. Julia made her choice when she decided to hurt Chloe. Now she gets to live with the consequences. As I said those words, I realized something had fundamentally changed inside me. The man who'd married Julia Rayner 10 years ago would have felt guilty about destroying her life, even after what she'd done. But that man was gone, replaced by someone harder, more calculating, and utterly ruthless when it came to protecting his daughter. Julia had wanted to create a sufferer. Instead, she'd created an enemy, and now she was about to spend the rest of her life learning the difference.